Hello everyone and welcome back to Python lessons on Codecademy. So today we will be continuing on with the more difficult part on Codecademy, where we aren't given as many instructions but we still need to do a quite difficult task. So let's get started. Our first task is called count. So let's see what we need to do. We need to define a function called count that has two arguments called sequence and item. Return the number of times the item occurs in the list. Okay, so I'm just going to call a variable counter and use it as my rolling variable. So apparently it's telling us that there is a way in Python to do this, but we need to do it along with our practice, obviously. So let's do that. Counter equals 0, then we will be using for loop to loop through sequence. Oops, for n in sequence, not for n sequence. That doesn't make sense. And if n is the same as item, then we need to increase counter by 1. And then we need to return what counter is. There we go. And that works. So let's actually explain what's happening here. We enter the function with a list and a variable. It can be an integer, it can be a string, it can be another list if we wanted to. We make our own variable called counter, which is an integer, and we then use a for loop to look through the whole of the list called sequence. If the item, which is stored as n in the current situation, So if item is the same as the element in sequence that we're looking at right now, we increase counter by 1 so that we count how many occurrences of it are in the list. We do that for this list 3 times, if that was the actual list, and therefore counter is 3 because we increase counter by 1 3 times. And then we return what counter is and we get the result. So let's move on. Purify. Define a function called Purify that Purify that takes a list of numbers, removes all odd numbers in the list and returns the result. For example, Purify 1, 2, 3 should return 2. So I will just call it a list. And then do not directly modify list as you're given as input, instead returning new list with only the even numbers. So I think the simplest way of doing this would be making a blank list and then filling it up as we go through our old list. So let's just call it output list, because I'm too lazy to make up names for lists. If it was a real program, I would actually be making up some more logical names, but for now I will just be calling it output list. Then we will just loop through our old list, which is called a list, another simple name. And if the value that's in a list that we're currently looking at is an even number, then we need to append it to our output list. So if n is an even number, which we check by modulo equals 0, modulo 2 equals 0, oops, we need a colon there, then we need to append it to our list. So append n. Then we just need to return our new list, output list. And nope, it doesn't work because I misspelled append. Now, there we go. So let's explain what happens. We enter our function with a list called a list and then we make our own new list, which we will use to append all of our even numbers in a list too. And we loop through our a list, and if the element that we're currently looking at is an even number, then we append it to our output list. Then at the end of the function we return our output list. So let's move on. Product. Define a function called product that takes a list of integers, so I'll again be calling it a list, and returns the product of all of the elements in the list. So this is similar to the first task, but we just need to do multiplication instead of addition. So we'll just call this variable counter and make it equal not 0 this time though, but 1, because we're multiplying, and if we multiply something by 0, we will always get 0, so therefore we can't actually use 0. Then we will loop through our A list and just multiply counter by each element in A list. So counter multiplied equals whatever n is at that moment, and then we just need to return counter. So there we go. I think that this doesn't actually require that much explanation because it's pretty similar to the first task. So we'll actually move on. If you want it explained, then please do ask in the comments, or just simply look at previous videos or even the first task. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So let's move on. Remove duplicates. Define remove duplicates. If I can spell, good. Duplicates. No, I can't spell. That takes in a list and removes elements of the list that are the same. For example, remove duplicates 1, 1, 2, 2 should return 1, 2. And then it's just giving us hints. Don't remove every occurrence since you need to keep a single occurrence of a number. The order in which you present your output doesn't matter, so returning 1, 2, 3 is the same as returning 3, 1, 2. Do not modify the list you take as input. Instead, return a new list. So we'll call it a list again because of laziness. Define remove duplicates. Okay, so we need to the simplest way of doing this is again making a blank list. So I will call this output list again and make it an empty list, not a blank list, because I'm used to saying blank string and then I just say blank list for some reason. And then if the element that we're looking at right now isn't in the output list, then we need to append it. If it is, then we shouldn't be doing anything to it. So how we can check that is actually we need a for loop to go through all of the elements in our A list. Then if n not in output list, if I can say that, there we go, then we need to append whatever n is to our output list. There we go. And then we just need to return our output list. Let's see if that works. It should. So this might seem a bit complicated, so I will actually explain it. We enter the function and make our own variable output list, which is an empty list. Then we go through all of the elements of our A list, and if the element that we're looking at is not in our output list, so it's not in our empty list at the start, so say our A list is 1, 1, 2, 2, like the example there, then n would be 1 and output list would be an empty list. So this would be true, and this is going to be executed. So output list dot append, and this would be 1. So our output list is currently going to have one element, which is going to be 1. Then we go into our for loop again, and we go to our second element, which is again 1. If n not in output list, now that's false, because n is in output list, because 1 is in output list, so this line does not get executed. So we go into our for loop for the third time, and this is true, so this gets executed with 1, and then it's false because we already have 2, and this isn't executed, so the for loop is exited normally, and we return output list, which is going to be 1, 2, if we're using this as our list. So there is a different way of doing it, which would be a lot less efficient, I think, which would be actually making a copy of our old list and removing all of the copies of an element in it, but that would be a lot less efficient and would take a lot more thinking and time. And I wasn't able to find out how to do that, so yeah, I didn't know what to do about that. I got this from the hint. I was trying at first to do that, but it showed to be too difficult for me. If you guys achieve that, then please do give me the code for it, and I will give you a shout out if that helps out in any way. So for now, let's just move on. Median. Okay, it's just telling us what median is, I think. So we need to write a function called median, pretty simple, that takes a list as input and returns the median value of the list. For example, median 112 should return 1. The list can be of any size and the numbers are not guaranteed to be in any particular order. If the list contains an even number of elements, your function should return the average of the middle two. So we will need to branch it off into an even list and an odd numbered list. But the first thing we need to do is order it. So what was it? We need to make a list equal to a list dot actually need to look this up. I think it was ord or something else. If it doesn't work, then I will actually look it up. So a list dot ord for now, and then if the length of our a list is an even number, so divisible by 2, which we can check like this, then we need to do something else. It's going to be an odd number, so we can just take the middle number. But let's work for it with this if it's an even number for now. So what we can, we need floats. We need to work with floats in case we have a decimal point. If we had, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, we will need to take 2 and 3, add them together and divide them by 2 to get 2.5. If we don't use floats, then our median would be 2 instead of 2.5. So how we can do this is, let's just call it upper number equals the length of our a list. Actually, we need the index of it to actually get the actual number, then divided by 2. That would be actually the lower number, and so we need to, would it be? No, it's going to be the upper number. Then I'm going to call this lower number equals the same thing but minus 1 in the index. I will explain this after I've done it, but for now I can't really explain what I'm doing. So upper number, lower number, and then we need to get average of those two equals that plus that divided by 2. Of course, we need to put brackets in those because of bit mass. Then we need to just return our average. But we need to make those two floats so that we can get a decimal number. There we go. So that's the even numbers done, the even length of a list done. Then else it's quite simple. We just need to get the number equals a list, and then we need to get the middle number, which is going to be the length of our list divided by 2. And we do that by doing this, and then we just need to return the number. Why I'm not putting this right into our return is because it just looks a lot clearer and better if we only return one thing in our return statement instead of putting all of those into our return statement. It would make it a lot less clearer of what we're actually doing. Yes, it might be a bit less efficient, but that doesn't matter because it's not that much less efficient. It doesn't matter that much for but if you make it more efficient, then you wouldn't know what your code is actually doing, and you would spend a lot more time trying to figure out what your code is doing than the code that the code has saved. So okay, let's see. Oops, we have done something wrong. It's supposed to be a list. No ord. So okay, how to order a list in Python? Oh yes, it's sort, not ord. And I don't remember if it was dot sort. Okay, it was dot sort. So now that I did this, let's actually explain what it does. So it enters this function called median with a list. Then we sort a list so that it starts at the smallest number and finishes at the biggest number, because to figure out a median we have to do that, otherwise it just wouldn't work. Then so let's actually do this else because it's simpler. If our if our list had an odd number of elements, then it's very easy to get the middle element. So we just need to divide by the length of 2. We need to divide the length by 2 to get the middle element, and we don't need to take away 1 because indexes start at 0. So this is how you get the middle element, and we just return it. But if our list had an even number of elements, then we have to get the 2 elements that are on either side of the middle, to say, and divide them by 2 to get their average, and then we just need to return the average. How we do that is by getting the lower number. Actually, those would be the other way around, but it doesn't really make much of a difference right now. Just so that I can explain it easier, I'm just gonna call them lower and upper that way around, and it doesn't matter there. So we take our lower number, make a new variable so that it makes it more clearer, and make it equal to whatever is below the center. So if our center, say you have 1, 2, 3, 4, the length of that list is 4. If you divide it by 2, you get 2, so the index 1, which would be the number 2. So lower number in the case of the list 1, 2, 3, 4 would be 2. Upper number, actually, would it? Yes, it would. No, it would be 3, because yes, we get the index 2, but we get the third element. So it does make more sense to be upper and lower instead of lower and upper. There we go. And because this is going to be the second index but the third number, so it's going to be 3. Upper number is 3. Then we have lower number, and we divide it by 2, so we get the third index, but then we say take away 1 so that we get the index before that, so we get the first index, and the first index is the second element, which is 2, and then we say average equals those 2 added together, or their floats added together. So 2 plus 3 is 5, and then we divide them by 2, so we get 2.5, and we just return the average. Hopefully that makes sense. So if it doesn't, please do ask in the comments. I will do my best to explain it in a different way. And thanks for watching. If you like the video, please do click the like button. Please subscribe, it helps me out. Share the video. If you didn't like the video though, do dislike so that I know that I need to improve, and do tell me what I should improve. Until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.